If you use your bike to get around from day to day, you know what a headache it is to fiddle with little adjustments all the time. And pretty often, derailleurs are the culprit. You can minimize that by using an internally geared hub, also known as hub gears. On a day-to-day basis, they're practically set it and forget it, which makes them ideal for transportation and for leisure cycling. But they're simply different on every level. Maintenance, shifting performance, gear range, cost, mechanical efficiency, weight, and so forth. After personally riding thousands of miles on both internally geared hubs and derailleurs, I've put together this video to dive into all the above, especially the not so obvious trade-offs. Stay tuned to learn how to choose the drivetrain that suits you. And yes, you could just buy a single speed and forget about all this, but that is a topic for another day. You're probably familiar with derailleur drivetrains, but just in case not, here's a brief overview. A derailleur is basically a spring-loaded cage with a couple pulleys. When you tighten or release the cable, the derailleur pushes or pulls the chain over an adjacent cog, which catches on the chain and pulls it into place. Simple enough. Internally geared hubs are a totally different animal. Rather than moving the chain between cogs, the hub itself contains a system of planetary gears that look almost like the inside of a gigantic mechanical watch, if you will. When you shift, it changes which combination of planetary gears is in contact with the main drive gear. And a couple of models actually use a continuously variable design, like some newer car transmissions, so you get infinite adjustments within the overall range of that hub. Either way, this is all super compact and sealed away inside the rear hub. As you'd expect, these completely different mechanisms, hub gears and derailleurs, have completely different advantages and disadvantages too. Incidentally, if you want a belt drive bike with multiple speeds, then you can stop right here since an internally geared hub is your only option. I'll link in the description to a video and a blog post that go into more detail on belt drive bikes. Derailleurs need frequent but minor attention to maintain proper alignment as the derailleur moves between cogs. It's usually just a few turns of a barrel adjuster with your fingertips and occasionally a couple of screws. Anywhere from once a week to once every couple months is reasonable for small adjustments, but that depends on your mileage and riding conditions. You can even install friction shifters, which don't click into place, so they require more attention to the act of shifting, but may reduce the frequency of derailleur adjustment since they're not so sensitive to minor deviations in cable tension. Rarely, when something goes seriously amiss, it's all visible in plain sight. Anyone with an internet connection, a few wrenches, and a little mechanical aptitude can probably even fix it at home if need be. And of course, any bike shop on the planet can help you since all derailleurs are basically variations on the same simple mechanism. On the other hand, internally geared hubs need rare but major attention, sort of like most parts of a car. They require nothing from day to day since all the moving parts are inside, bathed in oil, and totally sealed off. However, hub gears require an oil change service every couple thousand miles, give or take, which very few owners are willing or able to do at home. Serious problems are rare, but just about impossible for owners or even some bike shops to fix when they do happen. That's partly due to complexity, and partly because different hub brands use surprisingly different mechanisms. You can always ship the wheel to a more specialized mechanic if there isn't one locally. But as much as I hate to say it, it's often more economical to replace the whole wheel, especially on entry-level or mid-range bikes, than to try to troubleshoot a faulty hub. By the way, removing the rear wheel is harder with hub gears. Not only do you have to disconnect and reconnect its cable properly, but most internally geared hubs use a bolt-on axle, not a quick release, so the wheel itself is harder and messier to deal with. That also comes into play if you need to slide the wheel forward or backward to adjust chain tension. Fortunately, any shop can help with those things. The winner? For everyday maintenance, hub gears are vastly easier since they need just about nothing, but for service and repairs, especially DIY, derailleurs win hands down. Bottom line, I'd call it a draw since your preference for or against DIY maintenance and your access to competent bike shops makes a big difference. When properly adjusted, both shift crisply and precisely. The difference is that derailleurs only shift while you pedal, since the cogs must be rotating to catch the chain. But most hub gears should only be shifted while coasting or stopped, because it can actually damage their internal planetary gears if they're subjected to force while not fully interlocked. If you're accustomed to derailleur drivetrains, then that's counterintuitive, but it does become second nature with practice. One advantage with hub gears is that you can downshift while stopped, which comes in handy if your rides involve lots of intersections or traffic, for instance. But for more sport or athletic riding where your goal is generally to not stop pedaling, derailleurs make sense. However, derailleurs may not shift as well in snow or in heavy mud since everything is exposed to the elements. Internally geared hubs are impervious to weather since the moving parts are completely concealed. The winner? Hub gears, since they perform best for utilitarian cycling and in harsher weather. Still, both do work great as long as they're properly maintained, and they didn't come from an obscure no-name brand. Gear range, or the difference between the highest and lowest gears, matters more than the number of gears, although the two are correlated. Entry-level 3-speed hub gears have a fairly narrow range, which is sufficient for flat areas or mild rolling hills. Entry-level derailleur drivetrains have at least 7 or 8, covering a much wider range that works for at least somewhat steeper hills. And these days, so-called one-by drivetrains with a rear derailleur and no front derailleur and an ultra-wide range cassette are common. That easily affords 9, 10, or even 11 speeds across a huge range without paying much of a premium and without even needing a front derailleur to maintain or even think about at all. But hub gears with a comparably wide range usually cost much more. Plan on at least a few hundred extra dollars versus a bike with similar gear range from a derailleur. Granted, there may be other upgrades, so the hub is only part of the price difference, but it's still a more expensive package altogether to get a bike with hub gears that's suitable for steep, extended hills. The winner? At the entry level, prices are in the same ballpark. But if you need a lower low and a higher high for your terrain, then savings increase along with that range. For instance, if you want a huge 500% gear range for loaded touring on mixed terrain, then a sufficient hub on its own costs significantly more than an entire derailleur-equipped bike. A well-adjusted and lubricated derailleur drivetrain is very mechanically efficient. It loses just 1 to 2% of your pedal power to friction. But most hub gears, even quality ones, lose 5 to 10% depending on which gear you're in. That's because of the greater number of gears interlocked and the oil that they're bathed in. I'd compare the inefficiency of hub gears to riding in a very gentle breeze of a headwind. Now, in fairness, most of us are not the most vigilant about chain lubrication and cassette replacement and whatnot, so it's quite possible that you're already riding a derailleur that's dirty and saps almost as much energy as hub gears. But with the derailleur, at least you can do something about it. The winner? Derailleurs. The mechanical efficiency of hub gears may not actually bother you, and it doesn't dissuade me from using them, but it's only fair to point it out. Hub gears add roughly half a pound to 1 pound compared to derailleur drivetrains, although of course it depends on exactly which brands and models you're comparing. Now, hub gears usually go on practical bicycles with fenders and a rack and fat puncture-resistant tires and the whole 9 yards, so drivetrain weight won't make a difference in the big picture. But the winner? Technically, we have to chalk one up for derailleurs, but I've saved this for last because it's the least consequential. As usual, I'll stop short of a universal recommendation because we all place different weight on different pros and cons. But in general, derailleurs are a beautifully simple solution that has stood the test of time. We're talking over a century, with of course plenty of refinements along the way. And even if they can be a little finicky and hands-on, they do work well in most conditions. They provide a wide gear range at a modest price, and they're easy to service. Plus, derailleurs are generally best for sport or athletic riding where weight and mechanical efficiency do count. Internally geared hubs are the best way to avoid small, everyday hassles with your bike. If you ride mostly for transportation or leisure, and you can afford a bike with hub gears with a wide enough range, then you probably won't regret it. Just check with a few local shops to make sure someone nearby can service or rebuild the hub if that's ever necessary. Thanks for watching, and I'd appreciate your hitting the like button and leaving a comment if you found this useful or if there's another perspective I should have covered here. Stay safe, stay active, and I'll catch you next time.